I'm back again. You probably didn't expect to see me before Thursday when I do my 4th annual end of the year wrap up live stream on Thursday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. But yeah, I'm back again. Now, you know, I do a lot of videos and live streams based on some of the stuff I hear guys say on various podcasts and live streams. So I couldn't help but mention this. I was listening to a live stream, and per usual, some young brothers was talking about stuff to do with, men dealing with women, women dealing with men. And it was really a simple comment. It was a simple comment. But one young brother said, I want to get it right. This was either verbatim what he said, or it's only very slightly paraphrased. But he said, let's be real. All women love men who are tricks. All women love men who are tricks. And all men love women who are whores. That's what these young brothers said on a live stream. They said, let's keep it real. All women love men who are tricks, and all men love women who are whores. Insert dog face here. Now, as most people know who follow me and support me, I have multiple nicknames that have been given to me over the years, starting with probably like my high school or college days. Like, I know when I was in college, I had at least 3 nicknames. When I was pledging my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, the older frat brothers used to call me Cat Daddy. that was probably my first nickname. They used to call me Cat Daddy. Then there was another group of older frat brothers used to call me Space Ghost, which used to be a cartoon in the 1970s. They used to call me Space Ghost because sometimes when people talking to me, I just start spacing out and going into my own world. So that was one thing. That was my second nickname in college. So the first nickname in college was Cat Daddy. Then I had Space Ghost. And then the one that was the most flattering was after I started being Mode 1, using my Mode 1 approach with women, some of my younger frat brothers started calling me The Legend, D-A Legend, The Legend. But over the last few years, particularly as it relates to being a book author and dating coach, I've had some nicknames given to me, and most of you are familiar with those nicknames, but I'm going to briefly highlight my 4 most active nicknames. And here's the thing I've always mentioned, and this relates really to all my nicknames in my life. Some people have assumed that I gave myself at least 1 or 2 of these 4 nicknames. I've never given myself a nickname. I've never given myself a nickname. Every nickname I've ever had, somebody else gave it to me. And I'm going to briefly touch on the 4 nicknames that are most attached to me as I speak. The most popular nickname, of course, is the Godfather of direct verbal game, advice, and wisdom. That is not a nickname I gave myself. Some people a couple years ago thought I gave myself that nickname. No, I didn't. A former pickup artist and a guy who used to be real popular in the manosphere by the name of Sasha Daygame. Sasha Daygame gave me that nickname back in 2010. Sasha Daygame gave me that nickname back in 2010, the Godfather of direct verbal game, advice, and wisdom. Another nickname that's real popular is the King of Verbal Seduction and Kinky Erotic Dirty Talk. That's another nickname that at least a handful of people thought I gave myself. No. Some of my former casual sex lovers and phone sex partners, particularly in the 1990s, gave me that nickname. Actually, the most notable person that gave me that nickname is the woman you always hear me bring up on my channel, who I refer to as Sharon. That's not her real name, but I always refer to her as Sharon. I brought her up in multiple videos. Her and two of her girlfriends were the main ones who gave me that nickname, the king of verbal seduction and kinky erotic dirty talk. This third nickname is the nickname that's going to be most relevant to this particular video. That's going to be the most relevant to this particular video. And that's Mr. Pedantic. Mr. Pedantic. I actually received that nickname from some of the members and active posters on the site AskMan.com back in it was either in 2003 or 2004. 2003 or 2004 was when people on AskMan.com, they start calling me Mr. Pedantic, because I am. For better or for worse, I'm very pedantic. Again, if you don't know what pedantic means, that means you're very meticulous. You're very, very, very meticulous about how terminology is used, defined, and described. That's a pedantic person. When you're pedantic, you hate to hear people use a term invalidly or inappropriately. You hate to hear people use terms invalidly or inappropriately when you're pedantic. And then finally, probably my most recent of the four is ARC, the triple OG. I've always been called the OG. A lot of guys and young brothers have called me the OG. But there's one particular YouTuber who started calling me the triple OG. And that's the lead attorney. I don't know his real name, but he goes by the pseudonym, the lead attorney. He gave that to me back in August. Yeah, back in August of this year, he gave me the nickname ARC, the triple OG. So again, I'm going to focus, of those four nicknames, I'm going to be Mr. Pedantic and break some shit down. So going back to that statement, again, the young brother said, let's keep it real. All women love tricks and all men love whores. Because at the time they were talking about stuff to do with men tricking on hoes. Men tricking on hoes. Well, I disagree with that statement. I disagree with the statement that all women love tricks and all men love whores. I definitely disagree with all men love whores. That ain't true at all. That's not true at all. So I really agree with both of those assertions, but definitely between the two, I definitely agree with the assertion that all men love whores. I have a problem with the use of the word all. Now, if he was to say a lot of men love whores, or there's a certain percentage of men who love whores, I wouldn't disagree with that. That's true. But to say all men love whores, that ain't true. I know men who hate whores. Have y'all heard of Jack the Ripper? Some of you young people probably don't know about Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper was probably one of the first legendary folklore figures that he was known for hating whores, street prostitutes, call girls, escorts. That's the whole legend behind Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper hated whores. A lot of men hate whores. There have been guys who've been serial killers of street prostitutes and call girls. What does that tell you? They hate whores. There are men who literally hate whores. There are men who love them. There are men who are indifferent towards them and might interact with them occasionally. And there's some men who literally hate whores to the point where they want to kill them. And they have been killed. In a number of cities, man, there's been street prostitutes, professional call girls, erotic escorts that have been killed by guys who hated them. So for this young brother to say all men love whores, that's 100% false. And even the assertion that all women love tricks is fairly invalid. That's fairly invalid. There are a lot of women that have never sold their sexual companionship, and more specifically, their short-term, non-monogamous sexual companionship to a man for money. That's what a whore is. That's what a whore is. A whore is any woman that sells her short-term, non-monogamous sexual companionship to a man in exchange for preferably cash money, in some cases expensive material possessions like a diamond necklace or an expensive watch or even a car, in an offer of employment, or even like if you work in the entertainment industry, a woman might sell her short-term non-monogamous sexual companionship in exchange for a prominent role in a movie or TV show, or if she's already employed, a job promotion. Those are four major things that whores usually exchange their short-term non-monogamous sexual companionship for. It's either cash money, which is usually most preferred, expensive material possessions, offers of employment, or job promotions. That's a whore. That's a whore. There's a lot of women who have never been a whore. There's a lot of women who have never, ever, ever been a whore. So both of those assertions were invalid. Again, the second assertion was totally off base. And then the first assertion, I would say, it's not 100% false, but it's fairly invalid because there's a lot of women who have never operated as a whore. So let Mr. Pedantic break some shit down. I'm not going to be too long. I'm probably going to wrap this up in probably like less than 10 minutes. Okay? Here's Mr. Pedantic breaking some shit down. Let's start with the men. I hear a lot of men using terms that almost as if they're one and the same interchangeably that are really not. Now, if you own my books, particularly Mode 1, you'll know there's a group of guys that I refer to as a Mode 3 target. I have a Mode 3 timid, a Mode 3 target, and a Mode 3 liar, cheater, and fun clubber. Those are my three subcategories under Mode 3. Is a Mode 3 timid, which is a guy who's just dreadfully afraid to approach women and initiate a conversation with them. A Mode 3 target, which is what some guys in the worldwide manosphere and black manosphere nowadays refer to as a beta male simp. A Mode 3 target is essentially the same thing as a beta male simp. I want to say on a side note, my term came first. I've been using Mode 3 target since 1995. I've been using Mode 3 target since 1995. I didn't start hearing guys use the term beta male simp until about 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah, it wasn't until about, at earliest, about 2012, 2013, 2014, when a lot of guys started using the term beta male simp. I was using Mode 3 target, though, back in 1995. But I want to point out, here's my distinction of terms on the male end. On the male end, a simp and a trick and a sugar daddy are not the same thing. See, people who are not pedantic tend to almost use those three things almost interchangeably. They're not. They're not. Those are three distinct terms. What distinguishes them from each other? A simp is a man that will spend money on a woman who hasn't given him any pussy yet. In real simple terms, that's a simp. Is when you are spending a lot of time with a woman, and even more so, you're spending a lot of money on a woman, and she hasn't been physically intimate with you yet. She hasn't sucked your dick. She hasn't let you fuck her. And in some cases, you haven't even tongue kissed her yet. That's a simp. That's a straight up simp. That's when you're simping. Simping, again, in real simple terms. Simping is when you are spending a lot of time with a woman, and even more so, you're spending a lot of money on women. You're being very financially generous with women, materialistically generous with women, and that woman has yet to engage in any type of sexual activity and any type of physical intimacy with you yet. That is a simp. A trick is a man who exchanges cash money or expensive material possessions or offers of employment directly in exchange for short-term, non-monogamous companionship from a woman. Mainly money, but I mentioned 3 other things, but it's mainly money. When you're offering a woman money directly, keyword directly, you're offering a woman money directly in exchange for her short-term, non-monogamous sexual companionship, you are a trick. Then a sugar daddy. Sugar daddy is a guy who wines and dines women in exchange for their short-term or sometimes long-term non-monogamous companionship. That's a sugar daddy. A sugar daddy is a guy who wines down. He actually subsidizes women's living expenses and buys them materialistic gifts. He regularly buys women expensive materialistic gifts, and he subsidizes women's living expenses, rent, mortgage, car note, utility bills. That's a sugar daddy. In exchange for either one or two things, either in exchange for a woman's, usually a woman's long-term non-monogamous companionship, but in some cases, her short-term non-monogamous companionship. That's a sugar daddy. So, don't ever confuse a simp, a trick, and a sugar daddy. They're not exactly the same thing. They're not exactly the same thing. But I noticed some guys, not all guys, but some guys here on YouTube, both black and non-black, they use those terms interchangeably. Particularly simp and trick. A lot of guys use simp and trick interchangeably. Those are not the same thing. Again, going back to that assertion the young brother made, when he said all women love men who are tricks. Why do you think I wrote my book, The Possibility of Sex? Why do you think I wrote my book, The Possibility of Sex? That came out, was published in October of 2012, and on a side note, is without question the book of mine that's been ripped off the most, had talking points from it ripped off more than any of my other books. But why do you think I wrote that book? The main reason I wrote that book, here's the deal, without getting too lengthy, too detailed. Most women, if you gave them a choice, they would rather deal with a simp than a trick. Given a choice between the two, most women would rather interact with a simp, a Mode 3 target, aka beta male simp, than they would a trick. Why? Because with a trick, you got to give up the pussy. See, if you're a woman and you're dealing with a trick, you got to give up the pussy in order to get some money or expensive material possessions. If a woman deals with a simp, she ain't got to give up no pussy. All she has to do is sell a guy on the idea of the possibility of him fucking her, which is where the title of my book comes from, The Possibility of Sex. All a woman got to do is make a man believe that he has a chance at fucking her at some point in the near or distant future. Most women would always, in almost every situation, most women would rather deal with a simp, a naive and sexually desperate and financially generous simp, than they would a trick. If I had to rank in order, most women would rather deal with a simp first, a sugar daddy second, trick third. Trick would come in number 3. The reason why they would prefer a sugar daddy over a trick is because they ain't got to fuck multiple men for money. All they got to do is fuck one man over and over and over again for money. Most women would rather fuck one guy, the same guy, over and over and over again for money than to fuck 10 different guys in a month for money. Get it? Got it? Good? Big difference between a simp, a trick, and a shake. Yeah, man, most women definitely prefer to deal with simps. Because I've told the stories multiple times, man. I used to work with women in Los Angeles who was getting their rent paid, mortgage paid, utility bills paid, car note paid, getting clothes bought for them. And they hadn't even, in some cases, tongue kissed those men yet, let alone suck their dick or giving them any pussy. In some cases, they hadn't even tongue kissed those guys yet, and those guys was doing that type of shit. I know some of you guys, that's unbelievable to you, but that's real life. There's some guys that will spend thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, even in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars on women that they haven't even fucked yet. That's a simp. That's a simp. Most women, again, given a choice between a simp and a trick, most women would always prefer to deal with a simp than a trick. So, one more thing before I move on. If you remember, if you've been following me since 2018, you remember there was one notable black male YouTuber. It was a real brief exchange because he tried to say on his channel that there was no difference between a womanizer and a trick. He basically tried to say that there's no real difference between a womanizer and a trick. Oh, shit. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Womanizers don't spend money on women for pussy. A true player / womanizer don't spend no money on women for pussy, for casual sex. That's what tricks do. Tricks spend money on women for one or more episodes of short-term non-monogamous casual sex. Womanizer doesn't do that. He gets casual sex pussy based on a combination of his looks, his masculine sex appeal, and his mouthpiece. That's his currency. His currency is the combination of his looks, his masculine sex appeal, and his mouthpiece. Like me. I'm going to say for the millionth time, man, no less than 95% of women I've had casual sex with, I didn't spend no money on them. Not even $5. I didn't spend no money on them, man. So a womanizer and a trick, I don't, like the argument this brother made at the time, he said, if you got one guy that fucks 10 beautiful, sexy women, and then another guy who pays money to fuck those same 10 beautiful, sexy women, he said, what's the difference? They both ended up fucking the same 10 beautiful, sexy women. He said, so what's the difference? And I said, there's a big difference. Guy number 2 had to pay for it. He had to pay for it. Even if he ended up fucking the same 10 beautiful, sexy women as the womanizer, he had to pay for it. So he doesn't have the same egotistical bragging rights as the guy who got the pussy for free. Yeah, he might have experienced the same sexual enjoyment, same sexual satisfaction, but if nothing else, he don't have the same egotistical bragging rights as the guy who got it for free. If you had to pay a woman for pussy and say you fucked the same woman I did and I got that pussy for free, you don't have the same bragging rights as me. You don't. You might think you do, but you don't. And I'm going to let you know at every chance I get, you don't. You don't have the same egotistical bragging rights as me. Drops mic. Now, moving on to the women. Moving on to the women and my distinctions with the women. A lot of men, I mean a lot of men, tend to, in the same way I said that some men tend to use simp and trick interchangeably as if they're one and the same. Even more so, you got a lot of men who use the term slut and whore like they're the same thing. They're not. They're not. A slut and a whore are not the same thing. And let Mr. Pedantic break it down again. What is a slut in simple terms? In simple terms, a slut is a woman who has highly promiscuous tendencies and that will generally engage in one or more episodes of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex with multiple men in a relatively short period of time. That's what's generally known as a slut. She might sleep with like 8 to 10 men in a month, or 50 or more men in a year. That's what's generally categorized as a slut. Then you have a whore. A whore is a woman, as I actually already gave the definition for a whore. A whore is a woman who sells her short-term non-monogamous sexual companionship in exchange for cash money, expensive material possessions, employment offers, or job promotions. So as you can see, the different definition, the main difference between a slut and a slut gives up the pussy for free. You don't have to spend money on a slut in order to fuck her. A slut is going to give up pussy based on those three things I talked about. A slut is going to typically give men some pussy based on his combination of his looks, his masculine sex appeal, and his mouthpiece. His looks, his masculine sex appeal, and his mouthpiece. Yeah, sluts are more looks driven and sex appeal driven than they are money driven. A slut is more looks driven and sex appeal driven than she is money. She tends to only have sex with men that she has a genuine sense of sexual lust for. She don't care about getting no money from that guy, material possession from that guy. If that guy gets her pussy wet, she wants to give him some pussy. That's a slut. A whore is a woman who will have sex with a guy that she's not even necessarily physically attracted to or finds sexually appealing. That's the nature of a whore. Whores regularly have sex with men who they do not really find physically attractive or sexually appealing. But they have sex with those guys because those guys are offering them cash money, expensive material possessions, or employment offers or job promotions. And then both sluts and whores are not to be confused with a sugar baby. Sugar baby is a woman who doesn't so much exchange her short-term non-monogamous sexual companionship for money and material possessions, but more so her long-term. Sometimes it could even be a monogamous situation with a sugar baby. Sometimes it could be she exchanging her long-term monogamous sexual companionship in exchange for an upgrade in her lifestyle, money, material possessions, her bills paid. And in some other cases, it's short-term, like maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, in exchange for all those things. So you can't confuse and conflate a slut with a whore with a sugar baby. Those three are not the same thing, just like a simp, a trick, and a sugar daddy are not the same thing. If I had to add on one more on the female end, would be cock teaser. Of course, a cock teaser is a woman who's never going to suck your dick, never going to give you any pussy, but she will interact with you physically in a way that will make you think she's on the verge of doing one of those things, but she ultimately won't. Get it? Get it, got it good. See, a womanizer is to sluts what a trick is to whores, what a sugar daddy is to a sugar baby. That's the best way to think about it. A womanizer is to a slut what a trick is to a whore, and a sugar daddy is to a sugar baby. And a simp is to a manipulative time waster, financial favor seeker, and general gold digger. Get it? Got it? Good. Women would much rather deal with a simp than a trick. Why give up pussy in exchange for money and material possessions when you can get both of those things of equal value without ever giving up the pussy? Drops mic.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. you're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.
I have to agree with you on the communication piece, because I actually did take a session with Alan Roger Currie, and he gave me a line that I did not think was going to work, and it worked. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God!
Curry guys, man, he's the master. He's the master of the verbal seduction. He got that communication piece down pat.
It really worked. It just simply worked, and I just didn't think it was going to work at all.
Some guys have natural handles. Some guys have a better natural shot, but you can always improve your shot. And sex is damn sure something you can fucking learn. Look, dude, you want to learn how to talk better? I'm hiring Alan Roger Currie to get my dirty talk game on, because it's always been something I want to get better at.
Verbal seduction, man. I'm like, clearly, this guy's the Michael Jordan of seduction. Like, you know, come on now.